Welcome back, everyone. And this is part two of my interview with Síofra Kelleher from Sligo, attending UCZ down in Cork. And we ended part one of the video talking about the special accommodations for the secondary school state exams. And we're going to pick up now by talking through the process that Síofra, you had to go through to apply for those special accommodations for those exams.
So you'll have to forgive me. It was quite a while ago now, but I'll do my best to recount it. For accommodations, I think it wasn't too difficult. Basically, you just need to prove that you do have diabetes, and that you are entitled to these accommodations. So I believe really it was just I needed to have a proof of diagnosis and need for accommodations from my doctor. So that would have been my endocrinologist in Sligo General. I also have dyslexia, so I had other accommodations for dyslexia, such as a spelling waiver. So I also had to provide proof of dyslexia from a psychologist. So it was quite simple. I just needed to prove that I had diabetes. I was entitled to these accommodations and sent that off. And you then get sent back a letter confirming that you are entitled to those accommodations. And other than that, it's quite easy, to be honest. I'm very grateful for how easy it is.
Okay. And then but you had to reapply for the special accommodations for your leaving cert. But once you learned from your junior cert, you actually got the same accommodations with the multiple breaks.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you do have to reapply. And like in terms of dyslexia, you have to retest again, even though it could only be 2 years later, which is a bit of a problem right now. But you do have to reapply. And because I had gotten the unlimited rest breaks, which isn't in the criteria, and then I had to reapply, I did have to reapply and also ask for the unlimited rest breaks again and justify why I needed them. So that did require a bit more of a detailed letter, I suppose, from my endocrinologist explaining. But also, because I'd gotten them in my junior cert beforehand, they had already approved that sort of accommodation. So they basically approved it again, because it just made sense.
Okay. So thank you for sharing that with us. And then what I discovered, because I thought this was all part of the DARE process, which is the Disability Access something. The E is education. I don't know what the R is, which is a program that many people students with diabetes avail of. But I didn't realize it was what it was. I thought it was connected to the special accommodation. So let's talk about that now, because I think that was a little bit more complicated, was it?
Yeah, so I mean, I believe DARE stands for Disability Access Route to Education.
There we
I
go.
could be wrong
Thank
on that.
you.
It is a complicated acronym. Yeah, I think often they tend to come together because when you were reapplying for accommodations, you are also probably reapplying for the DARE scheme. Sorry, applying for the DARE scheme. But the idea of the DARE scheme is that it helps people whose secondary level education was negatively impacted by, they use the word disability, but the DARE scheme is also applicable for long-term illnesses, mental illness even. So it's not just people who are disabled or who identify as, but it allows people who maybe struggled in secondary school or maybe struggle with education in general due to their illness, and then therefore maybe their leaving cert would be a struggle for them. It just helps, I suppose, as a safety blanket to help you get into third level education. And what it does is basically on a lot of courses, there will be DARE places set aside. And if you are approved for the DARE scheme and you sit your leaving cert, let's say you wanted a course that was 310 points, but you only got 305. The DARE scheme places on that course might be just 10 points lower than the points of entry, basically. So
Okay.
it's not much of a leeway. Like 10 points is not a lot in the leaving cert. But I suppose it's just it's allowing a bit of a cushion, I suppose, for people to get into education. But the key thing about the DARE scheme is you apply for the DARE scheme, but you may never actually use the DARE scheme. For example, in my case, I applied for the DARE scheme, but I ended up getting more than enough points for my course. So I never availed of that DARE place on my course.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't know if there was places, but there probably was, they went to someone else. I went through with everyone else who didn't apply for the DARE scheme, if you understand what I'm saying.
Totally. Yeah. It's kind
I
of like
also
it was a backup cushion
exactly,
for you. Yeah.
yeah, it just helps, I suppose, maybe people feel more secure going into their leaving cert, that they have maybe a bit more of a chance. But also because I never availed of the DARE scheme, I never know now if I actually did get approved for the DARE scheme. It's sort of funny. You never receive a letter saying you've been accepted into the DARE scheme. You would only know if you actually did avail of the DARE scheme and get a place on the course. It's a strange sort of scheme. But what I'm very grateful for, I think it really helps a lot of people. But it is quite complicated to apply for. There's a lot of information on their website. I would have done my leaving cert in 2019, so 2 years ago now. But they've updated their website since, and there's a lot of really great information. So I would really heavily recommend people go on the website. There's lots of videos, and there's also copies of the forms for applying for the DARE scheme, because the forms I found quite complicated. You have to meet 2 levels of criteria. So you need to prove that your illness or your disability has negatively impacted your secondary school education. And that can be quite difficult. Because, for example, what I found with diabetes is, I remember one of the questions was, how many days of your years of secondary school education, how many days have you missed because of your disability? Whereas with diabetes, very often I may have missed a couple hours of school. So I woke up with a low blood sugar in the morning. That made me miss my first class, which was like, what, an hour. But I didn't miss an entire day of school. So I couldn't really fill out that question because I didn't miss a day. I missed a couple of hours of school, but they were important hours. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit tricky to apply for, in that sort of sense. And also, it was quite extensive. It does require you to go into quite a bit of detail about how your disability or illness negatively impacts your education, which obviously is quite difficult for most people, especially during a very stressful time when you're studying for your leaving cert.
And so it sounds like it's not just information from your hospital team. You have to kind of go into the school records and see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had
There's
to do
a
a lot
lot
of
of detail.
research. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. But then the benefits in college, because you talked about how that kind of
Yeah. It the great thing about it, because I do think it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I'm so grateful that it was there for me if I needed it. The great thing about it is, at least in UCC, their disability support services, if you applied for the DARE scheme, when you're registering for college, so like I registered on the online portal, instead of, if I hadn't filled out my DARE scheme, I would have had to go into college and find the DSS offices and then register with them, filling out forms and such. But because I had registered already with the DARE scheme, the DSS, all I had to do was tick a box on my UCC registration saying, I applied for the DARE scheme. I would like to be registered with the Disability Support Services in UCC. They were able to gather my details and register me with the DSS without me having to do anything,
That's
which I think
excellent.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, I think most disability support services in colleges in Ireland do that. They certainly do in UCC. And I think that's brilliant because it can be very difficult to walk into the DSS center, especially if you don't want to have anyone know about if you had diabetes or something. It's not something that you really want to do is in front of everyone walk into an office. So I think it's fantastic that they make it so easy for you. And also your first and second week of college are incredibly busy. I don't think going into your DSS office is at the top of everyone's mind. you
No.
know
So can I ask then, what are the benefits of being registered with the Disability Support Service in college?
yeah, I mean, I would strongly encourage anyone, if you feel like you need help in any way because of your health, to register or at least go in and talk to your DSS, because being registered with the DSS allows me to have the same exam accommodations that I got for my junior and my leaving cert in my UCC exams, which obviously is incredibly helpful. If I didn't have DSS, I wouldn't have that. But they also provide really great support in terms of if I'm sick, for example, and obviously, like if you have type 1 diabetes, diabetics will know this. If you get sick, you could be a lot sicker than most people and also for longer. So if I got sick, for example, and I wasn't able to complete a project in time, I can email my lecturer, yes, but also I have a person assigned me from the DSS, and I can also liaise with them, and they can help me talk to my lecturer, and they can even speak to the lecturer on my behalf if I do not want to speak, and explain that this student is a DSS registered student. So like, please give them extra time to do that project. So it's really helpful just having them there to back you up basically when you do need support. But at the same time, they're, at least in UCC, they're fantastic for giving you exactly the right amount of support that you need while also not being incredibly overbearing. I can avail of their help as much or as little as I want, which I think is great.
Excellent. So moving on now, because not only are you busy with college, but you're also volunteering, and you've been involved with a project called D1 now for a number of years, but you are also one of the two Irish representatives on the International Diabetes Federation's Youth Leadership Panel. So first of all, let's talk about D1 now and how you got involved with that and what it is.
So I suppose like since I got diagnosed, I, because it like changed my life so much, I always wanted to be involved in diabetes in some way. I've always wanted to just, I suppose, make the landscape better for the diabetics that are coming after me. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So I think I was about 17 and I just Googled like diabetes volunteering Ireland, something along the lines of that. And that's really how I came across D1 Now. I think it was their website. Because I just wanted to be able to do something. And unfortunately, I had to wait because D1 Now, the young adult panel that I'm currently on, is 18 to 25-year-olds. And obviously, I was 17.
You were 17.
Yeah, I was a little overeager. And then I wasn't able to join then until I believe it was my first year of college, because then I had the leaving cert and everything got thrown to the side. But I'm proudly on the young adult panel. And I mean, we're winding up to a close now. We are hoping to continue it in a larger scale. But basically, D1 Now, it's so unique because we involve diabetics in the research. The young adult panel is made up of, I believe there's nearly 10 of us, 18 to 25-year-olds. And we're all type 1s, but we're all so incredibly different. And we really like provide a perspective of a young adult who's been through the pediatric and the adult clinic services in Ireland. And D1 Now is all about how can we make it better for young adult diabetics by creating sort of like a clinic in between pediatrics and adults. We call it the young adult clinic. And we've created tools to help guide endocrinology appointments, and also to, I suppose, support the young adult. Because, I mean, as most older diabetics know, the transition between pediatric and adult clinics sometimes and very often comes around when you're doing your leaving cert. And it's really disruptive, and it can be very easy for young adults to get lost in the system and just stop going basically to appointments. So we're trying to bridge that gap there, and how can we best support young adults while also like helping to create more of an atmosphere of not having the patient feel like all they can talk about is their HbA1c and the numbers, that actually open up the conversation to like mental health or like diabetes burnout, which is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, but they just don't realize that they can actually talk about that with their healthcare providers. But yeah, I mean, it's been the most rewarding experience, and I'm so glad to be part of the team. It's like, I think when you're in it, you don't realize how much change you're doing, but now because we've been receiving the results of our research, it's amazing to see how much we've helped young adults, even just in the clinical trial. So yeah, I don't know how to finish that off.
Brilliant. And so because I remember with D1 now, they started with their pilot project in Galway, but I think they extended to Dublin. So is it just those two sites, or did they extend the pilot project to some other sites?
Yeah, I believe that we did have something running up north, maybe in Belfast. Now, I'm not sure. I don't think it continued there, unfortunately. But I do believe they are still using some of the tools that we created. They're just not running the clinical trial. We
Okay.
definitely had two hospitals in Dublin, and we had Galway. Unfortunately, nothing down south, though I would love to see that change.
Well, hopefully with the publication of the research, it will
Yeah.
become part of our national diabetes program. Well, that's the hope anyway.
Yeah.
And then, so quickly on to the International Diabetes Federation, because that's brand new
Yeah.
for you anyway, brand new for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really exciting. I suppose, I mean, Grana yourself was the one who pointed me towards the Youth Leadership Lab from IDF Europe. Um, I think many, many years ago, I believe I did actually see they previously ran it in person. It's all online now because of COVID-19. But again, I was over eager and too young to apply because it's for young adults, so 18 to 30, I believe, is the age group. But yeah, I mean, it's a youth leadership lab. They changed the name because it's completely online, but it runs until November. And basically, it's a bunch of workshops that are all about becoming a better diabetes advocate. So there's a lot of different areas we focus on, such as like the mental health conversation that I think is going on right now in a lot of diabetes groups. We also learn about project management. We also get to speak to a lot of people who have previously run diabetes awareness campaigns. Also people who have like collaborated with like Medtronic, for example. We had a recent talk from about their campaign, the Blue Balloon Challenge. So we're on a summer break right now. We've only managed to kind of do one class of project management, but I mean, it's incredibly exciting. I can't believe I was kind of chosen for it, but I'm really proud to be representing Ireland. And I'm finding it really great so far also because, I mean, going into it, I really want to learn from other European diabetics what it was like in their country, because diabetes care really varies across Europe. Even though we're all under the banner of the European Union, the experiences are so, so different. So it's fantastic to hear about that perspective as well, because I mean, I think just talking to other diabetics, it makes me a better advocate because I am able to understand and draw on my knowledge then when I'm talking to other diabetics in other countries. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait to learn more about it. And hopefully when COVID-19 hopefully gets better, we might be able to meet up in person, which will be really, really exciting.
Yes, yeah, I really do hope that happens because
Yeah,
it's such a different face to, online is great, it removes the distance barrier, but there's nothing like face to face and meeting people and sitting down and chatting over a beer or a coffee or whatever.
exactly.
So just as we wrap up, I want to talk about your area of study because you were studying information business systems. Did I get that right? Business
Business
information systems.
information systems.
I knew as soon as I said it, I had it mixed up. So just tell us a little bit about that and what you hope to go on to.
Um, wow. Well, I'm going into my third year. I did my second year all online, which was an interesting experience to say the least. But I mean, business information systems, it can be a bit of a tricky one to describe to people, because most people hear business and they think, economics and accounting. But the unique part of BIS, it's called for short, is that you're not just learning all your classic business subjects and economics and accounting, but you're also learning information systems. So computer programming, database creation, database theory, a lot of stuff around databases, which can sound quite dry, but I promise it is very exciting.
Well, my husband
um,
tells me that every day. Databases are exciting.
yeah, I think anyone involved in like IT will say the exact same thing. But yeah, I mean, the story I always tell around it is that I knew I liked computer science. I mean, my brother and my dad are both computer programmers. I was on the internet. I don't know how young. Computers have always been around me and my life. So like I knew that's what I was good at and that's what I wanted to go into. But at the same time with this, I just felt like I was really challenging myself by learning business subjects and management skills. And I felt like I would definitely be rounding out my skill set a lot more if I was studying subjects that I wasn't familiar with. Whereas, I mean, I was involved in Coder Dojo when I was 13 to 15, I think. So I knew computer languages. I wanted to maybe make life a bit tougher for myself for some reason.
Not at
Um,
all.
but I mean, even previous to that, like again, diabetes has really impacted my life in very positive ways as well. And like one of the biggest impacts is that my goal is that I will be involved in diabetes medical devices. So like insulin pumps and CGMs and the closed loop system, which I mean I'm currently on, as you know. But like I want to see that come to market. And I also want to be involved in diabetes medical devices because I've been pumping for nearly 10 years now. And what I find, especially early on, is that it was very, very clear that it was someone who wasn't a diabetic who had created this insulin pump. I don't know if you remember, but the Medtronic pumps chime every hour, and I don't know why anyone would need that. But so, I mean, that really inspired me of like, this can be done better. And I feel like I had the knowledge base in my experience. So, I mean, I'm starting off small. I'm still in college. I still have a long way to go to get into diabetes medical devices, but that is the long-term goal. And hopefully, with all my experience of advocacy as well, that will really help me get the skill set that I need, I suppose.
Definitely. And for me, just listening to you talk and listening to your skills and your knowledge and your experience, you're definitely one to look out for in the future. I have great hopes. And so thrilled to be a small part of your journey forward. Siofra, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time today and for our previous chat. And I hope everybody has enjoyed and learned so much, like I did, from listening to your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And we finally got to meet, which is excellent. Even if it's in a virtual setting. This has been a long time coming.
Oh, it will happen face to face. Believe me, I'll make it
Yes.
happen.
Okay.